because today I'm going to show you how to make coils. So think of it like this. When you were really little and you would use Play-Doh and you would go like this and you would make snakes, we're basically making snakes. Okay, so here's my pinch pot. I am thinking I want to make this into a mug. That'd be pretty cool. Okay, so in order to make it into a mug though, I need it to be a lot bigger than this because this clay is going to shrink 15%. Okay, so when I think about that, okay, right now the opening is about this big, okay? When it shrinks, it will be about this big. I don't want my mug to be really small either. Right now it's about this tall, and when it's all done shrinking, it will go down to about here. We know that it shrinks because right now this clay has a lot of water inside of it. And that water evaporates out. And so when it evaporates out, what happens is all those little tiny particles of clay start losing all that water going out, and they get closer and closer and closer and closer together. So when they get closer and closer together and the water evaporates out, that means the whole piece of clay starts shrinking. It will shrink a little bit before we put it in the kiln, which is the big oven that we put it into. But when it's in there, it will shrink a lot. And it'll go into the kiln twice. The first time, it'll get pretty hot, about 1,800 degrees. Then after it comes out, it'll be pretty hard. And we will then put glaze on it. Glaze is kind of like liquid glass. There's like little tiny bits of glass inside the formula. And after we put that on and then we put it into the kiln for the second time, then it will have shrunk to its final shrinkage. And that will be about 15% from what it is now. Okay, so thinking about that, I don't want it to be so tiny. So I'm gonna need to add more clay to this. So I'm gonna show you how to do that by using coils. So I'm going to open my bag, and I'm not gonna get all of it out yet. I'm just gonna pinch off some of it because I wanna show you how to do this. All right, so I've got some out. Once again, I'm gonna get the air out as much as I can, and I'm gonna close it back up. Okay, I'm just gonna set it aside for right now. So coils are kind of cool. At first, I'm just gonna squeeze it so it's, getting a little bit together here. So I've got this little, kind of cylinder so far. So I'm gonna show you how I do this. I usually start with my fingers together, and at first I'm just gonna roll it because I want it to be back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, kind of even, because I'm trying to make it more smooth. I'm noticing, I don't know if you can see it from there, but I'm gonna kind of move some of this clay around a little bit because it had a little dimple in it and I didn't like that. Okay, so just back and forth at first. Now I want to stretch this, and I don't want it to be this thick. It's kind of too thick. Kind of looks like a hot dog right now, or like a bratwurst. But I want it to be thinner. So I'm gonna take my fingers like this, and then I'm gonna start moving them apart. Okay, so I'm gonna do that again. So I'm going back and forth, and stretching side to side. Back and forth, stretching, stretching, stretching. Back and forth, stretching, stretching, stretching. So I'm gonna start making it get longer and longer. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. If your clay has gotten too dry, it might be going ka-kunk, 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 ka-kunk. And that can be really frustrating. You might want to get your hands just a little bit wet and then try doing it some more. So I've noticed that this side is getting a little bit thinner than this side, so I'm going to concentrate more on my left side again. Okay, it's getting longer. But I need it to really stretch. So if you notice, I'm always starting in the middle, but have you noticed my fingers are starting to spread apart too, because it's getting longer, and so in order to control all of it, I have to start spreading those fingers too. Okay, I'm going to concentrate over here for a second because I'm getting a little bit thin here. See if I can make it stretch out a little bit more. Hopefully it won't stick to your table. Sometimes they will. If that happens, I'm not sure at home what you could do. Maybe a paper towel, but it'll probably get stuck on that too. All right, so getting closer, but it's stretched quite a bit now, and it doesn't look like a bratwurst anymore. So it's looking a bit better here. All right, so mine is quite even. If you're having trouble with it being even, just crump it all back up and start over. That's the cool thing about clay. You can start it over again. Okay, so I have my coil that kind of looks like a snake, but I want it to look even as much as I can, unlike a snake, how it has a tapered head. Okay, now we're attaching this to the top here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my coil and I'm going to put it on here, but I'm going to press down as I do it. So pressing down, pressing down, pressing down, pressing down, because I want this to be really pushed down. If I don't pinch it onto there, then it will probably pop off and it will be like little bracelets that come off later. Okay, now a lot of times what will happen is when you get to here, I usually just take my fingers and pinch it, kind of push a little bit, and then make them match up. Okay, so if you notice this, pinching, making it match back up. Now this clay is very wet, which is great. So I'm gonna actually make these hook together here. My first pottery teacher said, marry them together, marry them together. That's how she would make you say it so that you're getting it all the way together. Okay, so now I've got some more. I can add this one on too. If I don't have enough to go all the way around, which in this case I will have enough, but if you don't, you could either just put part of it on or you could just start over and make a new coil. Now, last time I hooked it together over here, so I'm gonna start a little bit in a different spot, and when I put this on, I'm pinching it down, pinching it down. Okay, so I want to smooth. Now, here's the cool thing. Right now, it kind of looks like a pinch pot with coil. You can totally keep it like this if you want to. If you don't want to keep it like that, I usually take one hand and put it inside the other one, and then I'm either gonna push from the bottom up or the top down. I think since I have more clay here, I'm gonna use my finger or my thumb and I'm gonna push this up because I want this to look smooth. And so I'm gonna just go through. I didn't want it to look like coil. Some people love that look, and you can totally keep that if you want it. Now I'll come back through and I'll smooth this out a little bit more, but you get the idea. Okay, so I'm back to where I started. You can see I've gone all the way around, and obviously it's not super smooth yet, but I might leave it for right now as I add on another coil. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a few more coils to this to make it even taller. Right now, it's only about as tall as my fingers, and I want it to be a little taller for my mug. Okay, so I have smoothed most of the outside. I'm probably gonna wait for like one whole day later to smooth it some more because some of this will smooth better when it's a little more dry. Now I noticed that my inside is showing all the coils, and I thought, you know, I like it to be smooth. So I'm gonna take my thumb and I'm gonna smooth out some of those parts. So I'm just gonna go through now on the inside and smooth out some of the parts so that it doesn't look like pinch pot coil. One thing you might want to do is you might want to take your hand and put it on the outside so that when you are pushing that you have something to push against. So I'm pushing against my outside hand so that when I do this, it doesn't like poke a hole through it, or it gives it a form. So I'm using my hand on the outside so that I have something to push against. So I'm going through, I'm smoothing, I'm trying to make sure that this lip doesn't get too thin. If it does, it will be very breakable for one thing later. And also you want it to be nice and smooth and thick enough so that the person, when they put it up to their mouth, that it'll be nice and smooth against their mouth. Okay, let's say that you want to make this cylinder into a beautiful vase, and you just want to make it taller with some really fancy stuff to it because you want to add coils to it. So I've made a couple coils here. Some of them are quite thin and then some are a little bit bigger. So here's what I'm going to do. You will have a toothpick that you'll need in a little bit, and I'm just going to use my toothpick to actually do some cutting. So I'm going to just trim off a little bit here and trim off a little bit here. And then I want this piece so that I can just make it into a little arch is what I'm going to do. I'm going to add on some arches. So since I want my arches probably to be the same size, I'm going to use this one next to the longer piece to use as my measuring tool to get the same sizes. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to keep cutting, and so far I have 3, 4, looks like on this I'll be able to fit probably just one more, and then this one's a little too short, so I'll have to save this to the side. This one might work, it's going to be a tiny bit thinner, but that's okay. Alright, so I've got some here, and I'm going to attach them. So when I attach, I'm going to be making some marks on the lip of my vessel here. So I'm going to make some little marks on this side. When I say marks, like tally marks, and then make them look like hashtags. So tally marks and hashtags. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the ends of my little arches. So I'm going to make it look like this. I'm going to measure it and make sure it's going to fit. So on the end here, I'm going to make tally marks and hashtags. Tally marks and hashtags. So my secret ingredient is vinegar. So if you don't have any vinegar at home, you might want to just get a little tiny bit of water, because all you're going to do is I usually take my tall man finger and I just dip it in and I put a little bit on the end. Dip it in, put a little bit on the end. It'll make your fingers stink a little bit, but you gotta wash your hands anyhow, so that's okay. All right, so now I'm gonna put the hashtags together on this side. Hashtags together on this side. I'm supporting the bottom and pushing the top part down. So now I have a nice little arch on there because I'm gonna make this look kind of fancy. All right, so next I wanna make another one right next to it. So I'm gonna take another arch, and you can kind of see how we can just keep making more and more of these.